Highguard boss Chad Grenier was previously in the news for saying that it doesn't matter how many people played the game, only that the game is loved by the people who played it. And it's like, yeah, okay, bro, that's some real sweet talk, but the player count does matter, especially for a live service game, and you definitely need people playing and spending money on it. And yeah, that didn't work out so well, because late last night, this LinkedIn account, Alex Grainer, talked about how most of the team at Wildlight was laid off. And just a few hours after that LinkedIn post, Wildlight Entertainment confirmed that news over on their Twitter account, talking about these layoffs that they're now enacting. To make it even better, this dev from Wildlight just came out with a long statement that is taking no accountability on anything and instead just blaming gamers. You guys were too mean to this game. How dare you guys not support Highguard? So we're going to read that entire code post from this Highguard dev, this Wildlight dev. But quick side note, I actually just recorded a 10-minute segment talking about the layoff news and the shills who are coping and blaming gamers. And then right as I finished that video, this dev came out with this statement. So I was unsure what to do. Do I just release the video I have already and then do a second one on Highguard and this dev? Or do I try to fit that statement into the video I've already got? And so I've actually decided on the second option. I'm going to try to fit it all into one video. But the reason I'm making this disclaimer is because after we read this post, keep in mind the rest of this video was actually recorded before this part. So you might hear me repeating the same points throughout this video, in particular after we take a look at this new statement from a dev. And that's why, because I already recorded that part before, and a lot of what I already said in this video is probably going to apply to what this dev is saying now. So yeah, my apologies for that, but I'm going to do my best to cover this. So let's get started with this dev post. Josh Sobel, this dev who was formerly at Wildlight, guess he got laid off, I'm presuming, says, reflecting on shipping my first game, Highguard. Apologies for the length. Been wanting to say a lot of this for a while. The day leading to the Game Awards 2025 was among the most exciting of my life. After 2.5 years of passionately working on Highguard, we were ready to reveal it to the world. The future seemed bright. Everyone I knew who had any connection to the team or project had the same sentiments. This is lightning in a bottle. I trust this team wholeheartedly. If there's one project nobody in the industry is worried will fail, it's yours. Oh my gosh. This has mainstream hit written all over it. There's no way this will flop. I could play this game all day. Yeah, it's a perfect example of the toxic positivity mindset that infests the Western gaming industry. Specifically AAA, it's very common there, but not exclusive there. That said, a lot of the devs from Wildlight are from the AAA sector, so there is a crossover. But here's the other part of it too. These are grown adults. Like, it's their fault for believing the yes men around them that are just shilling for the game to them. Like, they could have actually done a beta test or something, but instead they wanted to just believe all of this sweet talk they were getting, and then they wanted to shadow drop this game out of nowhere. That was their original plan before the Geoff Keighley Game Awards part where he came to them with the idea. And then they chose to go with that idea too, which is something I'll be talking about later on in this video as well. This is to say, like, these people need to take accountability for what they do, and they never do. Continuing, he says, the internal pre-reveal feedback, even from unbiased sources, was quite positive, and where it was negative, it was constructive and often actionable. People who played the game, including us, had a blast. And since we were an independent self-published studio built with royalties in mind, many of us were hoping this could finally be the thing that broke the millennial financial curse. Oh gosh, the pity party's ridiculous here. But then the trailer came out, and it was all downhill from there. Content creators love to point out the bias in folks who give positive previews after being flown out for an event, but ignore the fact that when their negative-leaning content gets 10 times the engagement of the positive, they've got just as much incentive to lean into a disingenuous direction, whether consciously or not. The hate started immediately. In addition to dogpiling on the trailer, I personally came under fire due to my naivety on Twitter, which almost all of my now former coworkers had learned to avoid during their previous game launches. After setting my Twitter account to private to protect my sanity, many content creators made videos and posts about me and my cowardice, amassing millions of views, and inadvertently sending hundreds of angry gamers into my replies. They laughed at me for being proud of the game, told me to get out the McDonald's applications. Oh wow, that's so awful, dude. And mocked me for listing having autism in my bio, which they seemed to think was evidence the game would be woke trash. All of this was very emotionally taxing. So I actually remember covering a tweet of his back in December, And it was this one where he said, day one of being a game dev with a public-facing game, and I got 75 plus quote retweets, personally ripping me apart, simply for being excited to share what I poured myself into for years. Lock the account for the time being. And this guy's just misconstruing what actually even happened here. First of all, the quote-unquote woke trash comments, you can search for yourself. People who said that term to him. And there's only 3 comments. One from 12 hours ago, so that one doesn't count by default. Then you got one from January 20th and one from December 15th. So you have 2 examples. One that had no likes and one that had 1 like. This guy's apparently having a whole breakdown over this. Continuing, he says, there is much constructive criticism that can be and has been said about Highguard's trailer, marketing, and launch, but I don't think it's my place to commentate on that. I also don't think there's any way to know whether the launch would have fared better or worse without the massive spotlight that was thrown onto us in response to the Game Awards trailer placement, but we never got that chance. You guys didn't have to say yes to Geoff Keighley. You could have said, hey, we're good. We're just going to shadow drop it like we planned on. Thanks for the offer. You guys chose to accept his offer. Don't play victim later when you are grown adults making conscious choices just because they didn't end up good for you. We turned into a joke from minute 1, largely due to false assumptions about a $1 million ad placement, which even prominent journalists soon began to state as fact. Within minutes, it was decided this game was dead on arrival, and creators now had free rage bait content for a month. Every one of our videos on social media got down-vetted to heck. Comment sections were flooded with copy-paste meme phrases such as Concord 2 and Titanfall 3 died for this. At launch, we received over 14,000 review bombs from users with less than an hour of playtime. Many didn't even finish the required tutorial because your game was that boring. People are not obligated to play an hour or 2 before they decide it's not for them and to leave a negative review. I mentioned this before as well, and again in this video, I'll bring it up again. I just cannot believe what's going on here with this dev right now, guys. This dude, first of all, dude's crying about meme comments. That's pathetic. You're crying about meme comments? Get over yourself. But then also trying to dismiss all the negative reviews as just review bombing and like trying to invalidate them because they didn't play enough. Bro, you're lucky 100k people, 100k plus people even gave your game a chance. This emotional appeal for people to treat you like a victim right now is really not doing you any favors. This is a really bad post. We're not even done yet though. Let's keep going. In discussions online about Highguard, Concord, 2XKO, and such, it is often pointed out by gamers that devs like to blame gamers for their failures, and that's silly, as if gamers have no power, but they do. A lot of it. Oh my gosh. I'm not saying our failure is purely the fault of gamer culture and that the game would have thrived without the negative discourse, but it absolutely played a role. All products are at the whims of the consumers, and the consumers put absurd amounts of effort into slandering Highguard, and it worked. Dude, your game's just bad. You should be trying to learn from the mistakes that y'all just made. But instead, there's no accountability, there's no self-reflection, there's no attempts at improvement, there's just a lot of, oh, I'm a victim, feel bad for me, and those gamers are evil. Many of Wildlight's former devs will now be forced to assimilate back into the actual corporate industry many gamers accuse Wildlight of being a part of. Now, every time someone thinks about leaving the golden handcuffs behind in favor of making a new multiplayer game the indie way, they'll say, but remember how gamers didn't even give Wildlight a chance? You had over 100,000 concurrent players. You had your chance. The entitlement from these people is insane, where they will see 100,000 plus concurrent players and then still act like they were never given a fair chance. It's ridiculous. He says, soon, if this pattern continues, all that will be left are corporations, at least in the multiplayer space. Innovation is on life support. You guys didn't innovate anything anyways. You had like an amalgamation game that didn't actually try any new concepts. You just took stuff from other games, mixed it together, and did it in the most bland, generic way possible. And then when it fails, you act like you're these great innovators who weren't given the shot that you deserved, which is obviously not reality. Even if Highguard had a rocky launch, our independent, self-published, dev-led studio full of passionate people just trying to make a fun game with zero AI and zero corporate oversight deserved better than this. We deserve the bare minimum of not having our downfall be gleefully manifested. Dude, I'm almost cringing too much to even comment on this and finish it. Thankfully, there's only 1 paragraph left, or actually 2, I think, but this is just unbelievable. Who talks like this? You all manifested our failure. You're gleefully glad about the failure you manifested. Dude, get over yourself. And he's also acting like these were just total indie devs and it was like a small studio. No, not really. Arguably, it was AA, not AAA, but a lot of the devs from this this dev studio came from AAA and brought over the same AAA toxic positivity mindset that they had there. So don't act like you're some small little indie dev studio. That's not the reality either. I wish the best of luck to the few who remain at Wildlight and hope Highguard can stay the course. I still believe in it, and so do the fans we reached, who continue to champion it on the subreddit, Discord, Twitch, and social media. And even though this adventure has come to an abrupt and emotionally challenging close, I don't regret 1 second of it. Also, I just wanted to shout out some incredibly supportive journalists and creators who genuinely made a night and day difference in enduring the past 2 months. Oh, enduring the past 2 months. Yeah, it's so awful. People on the internet criticized your game. It's the worst thing ever, bro. All of these folks deserve far more credit than they get for their empathy, intuition, and integrity. Well, that was absolutely pathetic. Oh my gosh. The rest of this video, as mentioned, was technically recorded before what you just watched. But then that dev post came out, so I wanted to record that section and decided to put it in this video just at the very beginning. And so keep that in mind as we move on. And I'm going to be going over a lot of the people shilling for Highguard right now and getting mad at gamers like that dude just did. But that was even more funny because he was actually a Wildlight dev. But we'll be taking a look at more of those sort of people, just not direct devs of Wildlight, more industry shills, etc., etc., and also an update on Geoff Keighley. And so I could have commented some more on that dev stuff, but it would have recycled a lot of the talking points I'm already going to be using throughout the rest of this video. So I touched on some of it without going too far into it because there's still the rest. So hopefully that makes sense. Hope you enjoy the rest of the video as well. Let me know what you think about all this stuff, and here you go. So after the Highguard layoff news, we're now seeing some hilarious cope. For example, this tweet getting almost 2,000 likes from an Apex Legends streamer that says, "Feels so bad for this team. Review bombed by over 14,000 reviews with less than 15 minutes playtime within 24 hours of release. To be clear, one game is 8 to 35 minutes. Outside of FPS/optimization issues, the hate it got was unreal." Yeah, the thing is, Zach, like I also said previously, sorry to recycle the same talking points, but hey, they're still relevant. And so like I said previously, there was like 100,000 players trying Highguard out. These people should be thankful that so many people even tried this game out. Not complaining, oh, they didn't play it enough to leave a fair review. Nah, people tried it out. It's not our fault that the game was just not good. There's this nonstop toxic positivity mindset that we see very prevalent in the Western gaming space nowadays, usually in AAA, but sometimes outside of that too, where devs make a slop game. The game flops, they all get laid off, or, a lot of them get laid off. Then they get hired at some other studio, the so-called failing upward thing, and then they make another slop game. And then the game flops, they get laid off again, rinse and repeat. And a recurring theme throughout all this is that those people never try to improve. They never talk about the things they could have done better. They never try to improve as devs, improve as people. No, it's always either outright ignoring the criticism or trying to reframe it as just like hate and review bombing, or outright ignoring it. And then they have the audacity, them and their shills, to turn around and like blame gamers. Oh, you guys just review bombed it. Oh, you didn't give it a fair shake. Now, how about you just get good? Let's check in on good old Geoff Keighley. He, of course, notoriously attempted to really hype up Highguard over at his event, the Game Awards, and then leading up to Highguard's release, he had posted a series of tweets also trying to hype it up and implying that gamers were going to be wrong about this one and that we would all owe him a great apology because Highguard was supposed to be this amazing game that we'd all actually love or something. Well, now he says a large part of the Wildlight Entertainment team that worked on Play Highguard has been laid off just 16 days after release. An unfortunate, brutal, and sad outcome for a game I enjoyed in early playtests. There's a lot of people blaming Geoff for Highguard's failure. For example, this response from a content creator reads, "Geoff, this is mainly your fault. The game would have been underperforming regardless, but your overhype made the backlash 100 times worse." And I've seen a number of people make similar takes, really putting a lot of the blame on Geoff Keighley for all of this. Here's two more, for example. This one saying, "You caused this, Geoff. You oversold. They underdelivered." And this one that says, "You killed the game. You set expectations the game could never reach, tripling down on some whole other BS. This game could have shadow dropped like they wanted, but you really wanted to pull this stunt and costed them everything they've worked on." And even on the day of release, the Highguard devs were blaming the Game Awards for a lot of the negativity that they were getting leading up to the release after the Game Awards announcement. In this interview, they talked about how they wanted to do a surprise release, but that Geoff came to them and said he wanted to do something special by putting them in the Game Awards, and they decided to do that instead of the original plan of shadow dropping Highguard. And you could really argue that Geoff hurt Highguard by overhyping it, but you could also easily argue that the hype he built for Highguard still allowed it to have 100,000 players concurrently, which was impressive. And look, ultimately, it's not his fault that the game was mid. If the game was actually good, hyping the game up and getting it to 100K concurrent would have actually been a great net positive for the game. It turns out the game actually wasn't good, though, and most of the players dropped it. And look, far be it from me to be a Geoff Keighley defender. 99% of the time when I'm talking about this dude, I'm criticizing him. But in this context where people are, once again, trying to deflect from where the devs went wrong and where Highguard went wrong and putting most of the blame on Keighley, I mean, that to me is just ridiculous. And it goes back to what I said earlier about toxic positivity in this industry and how so many devs in the Western space here are incapable of self-reflection, incapable of admitting where they made mistakes and could improve on things. And so I get that same sort of vibe when people are just like, oh, it's mostly Geoff's fault. Like, no. You can argue that he hurt the game. You could also argue that he helped it. But one thing that is for sure objective is that the Highguard team themselves didn't do a great job here. And that's even pretty nice phrasing. The final point here, too, is that these people aren't obligated to do whatever Geoff wanted. He came to them with the idea of, hey, let me put this game at the Game Awards. They could have said, hey man, I appreciate it, but nah, we're going to do the shadow drop like we planned initially. They chose not to. That is their decision. The cope continues over on Bluesky, because of course it does. We've got journalist Paul Tassi here writing for Forbes saying Highguard isn't dead yet, despite most of the team being laid off. Almost sounds like a satire headline, but it gets even more hilarious in the responses, because we've got this Sierra person saying, screw the haters who killed this game before it got a chance to exist. And then this hypersonic person says, as much as I'd want to blame the haters for this, the game is simply too overcomplicated to market, and what marketing was there was terrible. I doubt haters had any influence on the game's trajectory, because 30,000 people still tried it and didn't like it. To elaborate, I genuinely believe this game would have done better without Geoff's intervention and screwing up their marketing schedule. And then Sierra responds and says, bro, Geoff should really owe them money. Hypersonic says, massive agree. This game would have had a much easier time finding an audience if he hadn't put them in such a bad position. And Sierra says, and this is a big part of what I mean about haters. The game has mostly marketability issues, but if people didn't harp on it like they did, because it checks notes wasn't TF3 or HL3, then people won't go in expecting it to be bad. Haters killed the game. These people are literally making every excuse in the book when they should just be admitting that this game isn't very good, and that Wildlight really needed to have done a better job. But hey, instead of admitting that, let's blame Geoff. Let's say Geoff owes Wildlight money for this. Let's blame the haters. Let's blame the critics. Let's blame the marketing and say that it was too much, but also not enough. And then bro's also way off about the metrics, saying 30,000 people tried it. No, try 100,000. And that's just from SteamDB. Here's another one over on Bluesky. Gamers have to be the absolute worst consumer audience. The review bombing on this game was so repulsive. And then you have the activists over at Aftermath.site, their new article about this news, saying, what the heck are we even doing here? They say loads of people are now reportedly out of a job, and whatever reason people can offer or accept for it, none of it seems sane or sustainable. Yeah, but here's the thing, these activists don't really want that discussion. They don't want that discussion. They always dodge the accountability, as mentioned. Aftermath previously made an article during all the criticism that Highguard was getting, and during the flop a few days after release. And they tried to deflect from all of this by attempting to make the argument that Highguard's not actually bad and the critics are actually wrong, because the real problem is the state of the internet. The internet's decaying. And it's like, look, the internet has become a worse place. But trying to blame Highguard's failure on the state of the internet was just such cope and such deflection. And so now they're saying that none of this seems sane or sustainable. And it's like, yeah, you're the sort of people that push the toxic positivity that keeps ending up in this mess. You don't actually, you being them, they don't actually want to talk about sustainability, because every time this stuff happens, they don't take accountability for it. When Veilguard failed, when Concord failed, when all of these slop games failed, these activist types always just blame the gamers. And they never talk about, as I've said many times throughout this video, how these sort of failing people can improve. Instead, it's excuse after excuse after excuse, and now this guy says, oh, none of it seems sane or sustainable. Yeah, it actually doesn't, does it? But again, These people will never actually admit why. And that's the video. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the coverage, and I'll see you in the next one.